Hi yogis, friends, anybody who happens to be joining in from anywhere in the world. This is not my thing at all. I am a yoga teacher. I teach in a yoga studio in Colchester. Owing to the new government guidelines regarding coronavirus, I have now found myself holed up in my study. Welcome to my study, everyone. This is a pretty small space. So what I'm experimenting with now under the circumstances, a new online yoga classes, yoga flows that people can follow along with at home, who are also restricted to similarly small spaces. So the majority of these will be restorative flows, as today's in fact will be. Just a short 30-minute, nice, slow, restorative stretch. And we'll be focusing predominantly on postures to work into the lower body in a little bit more depth, so releasing any tension from the hips or from the knees. And we're going to start in an easy, comfortable position. So maybe for some that's with crossed legs, maybe for some that's sitting back onto the heels of the feet. I'm aware that not everybody may have yoga props or blocks at home. I've just slipped this block underneath the base of the tailbone for a bit of extra height at the beginning, but you can use a book or a cushion or anything else that you might have at home, just to give yourself a little bit more height at the beginning of practice. We want to start by bringing the palms of the hands to the knees, rolling the shoulders away from the ears, and lifting up nice and tall through the spine. So soften the eyelids closed and take a few rounds of breath to begin to tune into the pace and the quality of your inhalations and exhalations. Notice whether your breath happens to be deep or shallow, rough or smooth. Maybe you notice a little bit of unevenness or irregularity between the inhalation and exhalations. It's a really good opportunity just to begin to balance out the breath. See if you can begin to invite the breath a little bit deeper into the lower belly, allowing the ribs to expand and the chest to rise, filling the body all the way up to the throat with the breath. And exhaling to release the breath from the body, allowing the chest to drop down, the ribs to draw in, and the belly button to draw back toward the spine. So emptying the entire body of the breath, inhaling then to allow the lower belly to inflate, and inviting more and more space into the body with each and every round of breath. So you may begin to find, as you bring a little bit more awareness, a little bit more attention to the breath, that maybe some tension or tightness is beginning to creep into other areas of the body as you focus the mind. So with each and every inhale, see if you can grow a little bit taller through the spine, reaching the crown of the head up toward the ceiling. And with each and every exhale, allow the shoulders to drop down away from the ears. Softening the head, neck, shoulders and spine. Surrendering any tightness or tension in the hips or in the knees. And maybe if it feels nice while you're here, just to invite a little bit of movement to the body, softening any areas that are really beginning to tighten up. Maybe you're only just beginning to notice certain areas of the body that were already tight. And then gently begin to blink the eyelids open. If you're using a prop, start to slide it out from underneath the base of the tailbone. We're going to begin to take our first posture here, which is our bound ankle pose or butterfly pose. So we're going to bring the soles of the feet together to touch and open the knees out to the sides. So this might already be a super challenging stretch for some. A few variations that you can take here just to modify to make it slightly easier at first. So option number one would be to slide the feet a little bit further away from the pelvis so that you're creating more of a diamond-like shape with the legs. Option number two is to bring your block or your prop back into play and just stay lifted at the base of the tailbone so that the spine can hinge from the hips and find a little bit more extension. So whichever variation you're taking here, start by lifting up nice and tall. And I always encourage students in a restorative practice anyway to close their eyes every time they've found their way into the position that they want to find, wherever they feel like they can stay and breathe for a few moments. So grabbing a hold of wherever feels comfortable. Maybe that's the ankles, maybe that's the feet. Give yourself another couple of rounds of breath to lift up tall through the spine. And as you exhale, start to fold forward. So you can do so with a straight spine at first. So see if you can hinge from the hips. We're reaching the heart forward. So notice if it feels like the chest is collapsing in or you're being pulled backwards in space by the spine. Find a little bit more length in the chest, rolling the shoulder blades all the way down the back toward the waist. And once you've found that space for the chest, option to come into a nice restorative variation of this very same posture. You can invite a little bit more of a curve into the spine, drop the head, neck and shoulders down. So at this stage you want to release any sort of temptation that you might have to pull on the feet to draw yourself a little bit deeper. See if you can release the hands, maybe even turn the palms up to face the ceiling. That will really help to resist the urge to pull yourself deeper than you're ready to go. So we're just allowing gravity to do the work on the body here. If you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable or like things are beginning to seize up, that can be quite normal. If you get any acute pain or any twinges, then just give yourself some more space, lift up the knees, slide the feet further away. Be completely safe here in your practice. So you shouldn't be feeling an awful lot of discomfort, but I mean, there's nothing particularly comfortable about deep stretches either. So just be aware of your own edge and how this feels inside of your own body. Maybe that you take this into the lower back, maybe into the hips. And each and every time we find our way into a new posture, bringing the awareness and the attention back to the breath. With each and every inhalation, inviting a little bit more space to those areas of the body that are harboring the tightness or tension. With each and every exhalation, seeing if you can surrender to the stretch. Maybe dropping a little bit deeper. Maybe the body is resisting the stretch, so there's no harm in just staying with the breath. And it's going to be different for everybody on each day. Some days you might find that you can come a lot deeper into the stretch that you normally can. Some days you might get super deep and then the next day maybe you can't find your way in at all. So just be patient with where the body and the mind feel like they happen to be on this particular day. Take one more deep breath. Exhale, maybe see if you can fold just a tiny bit deeper. And then gently inhale to start to lift back up through the spine, nice and slowly engaging the core, using the hands to guide the knees together. And maybe swaying the legs from side to side just to release through the hips. Take a few moments here. Now we are not quite done with our deep hip stretches. So the next pose we're going to come into is our straddle fold. So we want to open the legs out to the side. Now, common misconception with this stretch is that the most important thing is how wide you manage to get the legs. Actually not the case at all. So it doesn't matter how wide you can get the legs, maybe bring them a little bit closer towards one another for today's practice. Make sure that the toes stay flexed. This will help to protect the knee joints while we're here. Now again, if this already feels super intense, bring a block or a cushion back into play. You can slide it underneath the tailbone for a bit of extra height, just to keep the chest lifted, maintain that hinge in the hips, so the thighs should be spiraling up toward the ceiling, and we should be finding length through the spine, nice and open through the chest. So take a deep inhale, see if you can find as much length as possible. And then as you exhale, we'll start to sink into this posture in the same way as we did in our last posture. So hinging from the hips and maintaining a straight spine at first. So maybe that means you only come a centimetre further forwards. It took me months and months and months before I could fold any further forward than this. So take it nice and easy. We're going to be here again for a few minutes, so there's absolutely no rush to pull yourself into this stretch. In fact, the entire premise of restorative yoga is to release that urge to pull, to press. Stay easy with the breath, and with each and every exhale you might find that you can sink a little bit deeper. An option, as we did in the last posture again, to maybe just drop the head, neck and shoulders all the way down. So feel free to invite a curve into the spine. You don't need to stay straight and engaged and aligned all the time. Just allow the force of gravity to do the work for you on the body here. Nice long deep breaths with each and every exhalation. Maybe you find that instead of pulling yourself deeper, you can just surrender another area of tightness or tension in the body so that you can fold a little bit deeper. So patience is key here, and once again, if you notice any tweaks or any areas of acute or sudden pain, just ease back out of it nice and slowly. And there's nothing wrong either in restorative yoga. Maybe you find your way in, maybe it feels comfortable when you're all the way here, and then maybe after a minute or so things start to seize up. There is absolutely no shame in reversing the steps with these postures and giving yourself a little bit more space. So notice where you're at today. Again, I would invite you all to keep the eyelids closed for the majority of the session today. As you inhale, gently start to lift the gaze. Gently start to walk the fingertips back up towards the body. We're drawing the knees together, and once again just taking some easy movements from side to side with the knees, bringing a little bit of movement, a little bit of mobility back into the hips. Okay, so we're going to find our way into tabletop position, crossing the legs, coming lengthways on the mat if you're not there already. And we'll be stacking the wrists underneath the shoulders and the knees underneath the hips. So make sure that you're nice and square here. Engaging the back muscles. And we're going to step forwards into a low lunge position to start with. So grabbing a hold of your right ankle and maybe just guiding it forwards. So take your time. We want that right knee to remain stacked above the right ankle, and we want the hips to stay parallel to the short edge of the mat. So notice if your left hip is starting to roll out and that right hip is starting to roll forwards. Feel like you're pulling that right thigh back into the hip socket. That left hip should start to roll forwards. Maybe you start to find a little bit more space here, in which case you can shuffle that left knee a little bit further back. So option to keep the fingertips on the ground here. If this feels really intense, you can use a block or a prop to lift up a little bit higher. Bring that block to the inside of the right leg. Maybe use it to give your fingertips a little bit of an extra bolster here. Try to stay soft in the upper body while staying lifted through the chest and straight through the spine. With each and every exhale, maybe you find that you can soften the hips a little bit deeper without sacrificing the integrity of the alignment in the lower body here. So stay lifted in the chest. If you're using a block, you might start to find that as more space frees up, you can come a little bit deeper. Maybe modifying here, maybe coming down onto the palms of the hands. Now, option for those who feel super comfortable at this point to shuffle that right foot over to the outer edge of the mat and bring both palms to the inside of that foot for your lizard lunge. So the right knee should be hugging in towards the right shoulder. The entire torso is now dropping down into the space on the inside of that right thigh. Maybe this feels a little bit more intense already. If you feel like you can go deeper, you've got the option to drop down onto one forearm, or maybe coming all the way down onto both elbows. If that feels too much, but you feel like you can go a little bit deeper, you can always use a prop again to come part of the way down. Make sure that that lower body is still doing the work here. The right knee hugging in towards the right elbow and the right shoulder. With each and every exhale, see if you can soften any tightness or tension in the upper body. This is an intense stretch. And as you inhale, start to lift back up onto the palms of the hands. If you're not there already, and lift the weight up so that you can slide that right foot back in space. Maybe just take a few circles with the hips here, bringing the weight of the body forwards. So as we circle through the hips, you might find that you're taking the stretch into the outer hips. Sequencing with the breath, so start to notice how one side of the body feels compared to the other, and we'll take it to the opposite side. So maybe grabbing a hold of the left ankle just to give yourself a little hand forwards here. We want to start by making sure that that left knee is stacked above the left ankle. Fingertips can ground down either side of that front foot at first. Stay lifted in the chest, rolling the shoulder blades all the way down the back. Fingertips are pulling towards the back of the mat. If it starts to feel like a little bit more space is becoming available, you can try shuffling that right foot a little bit further back in space. With every exhale, allowing the hips to sink a little bit deeper. So make sure here again that the hips are parallel to the short edge of the mat by making sure that that left leg is pulling back and that right hip is rolling forwards. And if you're starting to find that space is freeing up here, you can bring that left hand to the inside of the left foot. Start to heel toe the left foot to the outer edge of the mat. Find a little bit more space inside of this hip with your lizard lunge. So make sure that that left knee doesn't start to collapse out to the side. Keep it hugging in towards the left arm, the left shoulder in particular. Maybe staying upright, or maybe if you're quite happy here, taking that variation by coming down onto one forearm, or maybe coming all the way down onto both forearms. Whichever variation you're taking here, stay easy with the breath. Try to keep that integrity in the lower body alignment while staying soft in the upper body. Inhaling deep into the lower belly. And exhaling to soften any tension or tightness that you encounter here. One more breath. And then gently inhale, start to press back up onto the palms of the hands. And lifting the weight of the hips a little bit so that you can start to heel toe and slide that leg all the way back around. Maybe taking some circles with the hips like we did after working through the opposite side. And then we're going to drop down into our child's pose, walking the knees nice and wide to the outer edges of the mat, bringing the big toes together to touch and sinking the hips back down to the heels of the feet. Arms come all the way out in front. And if you can, if it's accessible to you, to drop the elbows down to the ground and bring the forehead to rest against the earth. It should feel like a really nice grounding posture, just to breathe open through the hips and also through the chest after some of those deeper hip openers. So with each and every exhale, see if you can allow the chest to drop down between the thighs, find connection with the earth. And I think for this sort of grounding restorative yoga, it's always nice to keep the palms of the hands flat to the mat, but if it feels nice to take this stretch a little bit deeper, you've got the option again to tent the hands, come on up to the fingertips. See if you can visualize drawing that inhalation all the way down deep into the lower back. And exhale, soften the palms of the hands back down. Slide the elbows in toward the body. Walk the knees together. We're going to cross the legs behind and sweep the legs all the way out in front. Just counter stretching here with a nice forward fold. I say nice, but when you're holding this for longer than usual, and particularly when you can't use the strength of the upper body to give you a little bit more traction here, it's not always the most comfortable posture. So I would start by bringing a bend into the knees. Keep the toes flexed again like we've done in some of our other lower body stretches. Especially if you know that you're already tight in the hamstrings. It might be an effort just to fold a little bit further forwards, but see if you can start to guide the belly down toward the thighs and maybe reach down for the outsides or the tops of the feet. Maybe grab a hold of the toes. And once again, try to resist the urge to pull yourself further in. So once you find a forward fold here, it might be a nice option to release the feet altogether, turn the palms up to the ceiling, just as we've done in some of our earlier postures, and then release the weight of the head, neck and shoulders over the legs. Once again, inviting a curve into the spine, softening the eyelids closed and allowing the attention to turn back inward. Now maybe the longer you're here, the more space starts to free up, and maybe you find that it does become more comfortable to straighten out the legs, kicking forward through the heels of the feet, toes keep pointing up toward the sky. And gently start to inhale, roll through the back body, lift up to a neutral spine and shuffle the bum forwards. Bring a little bend into the knees so that you've got space and time. Start to guide your way down onto the back, hugging the knees into the chest once you arrive. Maybe rocking from side to side or forwards and backwards. That should feel like quite a nice massage for the lower back here. Maybe even if you draw some nice big circles with the knees. We're going to take one final supine twist before our Shavasana, opening the arms out to the sides. And you can set them all the way out long or bring a bend into the elbows. Take a kind of cactus arm variation here. Whatever you've got space to do and whatever feels good in the body. As you exhale, start to drop the knees over to the right hand side, turning the gaze back toward the left fingertips. So although we are taking this as a sort of restorative posture, it's important to make sure that that left shoulder blade continues to make contact with the earth. So if it feels too intense at any point, you can lift the hips up a little bit. The knees don't have to come all the way down to make contact with the earth. If you want to take it deeper, you've got the option to cross the left leg over the top of the right. And in these supine twists, it's an opportunity at the end of your practice to begin to allow the breath to return to a natural rhythm. So maybe the breath starts to become a little bit more shallow again, and that's okay here. Just allow the breath to guide itself at this point in the practice. And gently begin to inhale to unravel. Find your way back to center. Recalibrate here, and as you exhale, drop the knees over to the left. Keep grounding down through that right shoulder blade again. So notice what happens to the upper body as the lower body's doing its thing. If you're quite happy here once you arrive, maybe turning the gaze back toward the right fingertips or back toward the right elbow or arm. Option to ease out of this one by lifting the knees a little ways if it becomes too intense, or option to add on by crossing the right leg over the top of the left. And all together, inhale to draw the knees back to center. This time we're going to ball up nice and tight, hugging the knees in toward the chest, squeezing the forehead up toward the knees. And then exhale to release all the way down to the ground for Shavasana. So just make sure that you've got plenty of space here to send the legs out long. Release the feet a little bit wider than hip width distance apart. Bring the arms down by the sides of the body and turn the palms up to face the ceiling. Allow the shoulders to roll down and away from the ears. Soften the space between the eyebrows. Slacken the jaw. Release the tongue inside of the mouth as you turn your awareness back to the natural rhythm of the breath. Just observing your inhalations and exhalations as they come and go from the body. With each and every exhale, allowing the body to soften into the earth, becoming heavier and heavier with each and every round of breath. You can stay here for as long as you need to, maybe even pausing the video to stay with your relaxation. What option to begin inviting a little bit more breath back into the body by lengthening the inhale and the exhale. Maybe inviting some movement to the body by bending into the fingers and toes, circling up through the wrists and ankles. If it feels nice to take one final full body stretch, take a deep inhale to float the arms up and overhead, lengthen through the arms and through the legs. And exhale, bring a bend into the knees. Curl onto one side. Just take your time nice and slowly. As you make your way back up to an easy seat, and coming back up in your own time, and finding your way back to a comfortable seat, just as we did at the start of practice. So maybe that's cross-legged for you, maybe that's sitting back on the heels of the feet. Just return the palms of the hands to the knees, soften the eyelids closed. Take a few rounds of breath to bring some awareness back into the body. We'll take one final deep inhale to float the arms all the way up and overhead. Exhale, bring the hands to heart center. Tilt the chin toward the chest. And inhale to open your eyes. Namaste.